think so. I think it's the best way to learn about our history and the role we played in American history. You know, how diverse the, you know, children learn one side of history, but through books, through literature, they can learn all the diversity, all the different layers of that history. I think that's the responsibility of children's literature.
Do you think
historically?
Yeah. Do you think that giving them so much diversity at a young age would confuse them about history, or it's better at a young age to, you know, give them all those perspectives so they understand it's not one-sided for history?
Not at all. I think we're in a very unique period of time. We now have a chance to write history from all perspectives, from all points of view. That was not so in the past. You know, history was just one view, you know, and now we all write history because we all make history.
Great. So why was the story of Pura Belpré particularly meaningful to you?
Pura Belpré was the first Latina librarian to work in any major library system or public library in the United States. She was accomplished in many things, but she was a visionary and she was a leader in the profession, not only with the Latino community, but with the community at large. She knew that it was important, it was the responsibility of the librarian to take the services in the library to the community. Not to just sit there and wait for the community to come, but to work with the community and know your community and bring them in by reaching out to them.
So what was your connection with Pura Belpé?
I admire her work from the very first day that I started in the profession. I had the opportunity to work with a librarian who became my mentor in the profession, who was also have worked with Pura Belpré in New York Public Library. So my exposure to Pura Belpré's work was through someone who worked with her. So indirectly, I always say Pura Belpré was my spiritual mentor in librarianship.
Great. So what were your experiences like with libraries as a child?
I grew up in Cuba, and we had a public library, and it was very different than the types of libraries we have here. There are no air conditioning, the books are suffering with humidity, but I did have a chance of, because it was a socialist society, and I think it was unique in Latin America, Cuba did have, every community had a public library. Now the public library as I knew it here, which is a wonderful place to be, it was very different, but as a child growing up, I loved libraries, and I was lucky to have them in my childhood.
Can you describe a little bit more about how the Cuban libraries are kind of different from American libraries, just so you know children out there know how lucky they are to be in America?
Well, in Cuba, they don't have the resources that they have here, and it is a community effort to put the library together. They place a lot of importance in the library itself, but they don't have the economic resources to maintain such wonderful places as we have here. Now, in the United States, public library has been part of community life forever, since the early part of the 1900s. And children go and play, and it's a community center. It's a center where all families come together and interact and so on. That is a different concept than libraries everywhere else, I think, you know.
So do you think it's important for parents to introduce their children to libraries?
It is very important. Libraries provide a wealth of information and services that children need to know from an early age. That's where they get exposed to all kinds of literature, to all sorts of books. That's how they learn about the world around them, and their communities, and the people in their communities. That's where they learn the first skills of reading. That's where they are introduced through the story time to, like the little ones, the toddlers and the preschoolers, to group activities. And it is very important for parents to bring their children at the earliest age, even as babies. Libraries now have story time for babies. So they should use that opportunity that they have here.
So for parents who don't understand how they can utilize their libraries for their kids, what would your advice or recommendation be for them? How should they go about it to encourage and introduce their children to this wonderful resource that we have?
Well, the moment parents discover the library, they discover the activities in the libraries, they discover the resources available for them in the libraries, they become users. So it is the job of the librarian in each community to get the word out. Sometimes the library can be a hidden secret, but once the secret is let out, the people will come because they will be more, I mean, they're not going to be able to believe all the wonders that are housed in libraries.
Mm-hmm. Great. So when did you first come up with the idea of writing this book?
It was a dream of mine to write a book about Pura Belpré, and Children's Book Press at the time approached me if I was interested in writing a book about Pura Belpré, and I thought that was what I always wanted to do, and there was such a need. And I thought, if I'm going to write a book about Pura Belpré, I have to write it about her work and how her work impacted the lives of children in her time, in her community, children that went to her story times.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how the idea came up.
When was this? How many years ago?
This was in 2006, April of 2006. That's when I was asked if I was interested in writing a book about Pura Belpré. And from the very beginning I said, I do not want to write a biography. I want to write a story.
But why for children? Is there a reason they specifically chose to, your medium to be for children and not for adults, not for any other audience?
Well, it is my goal to bring Pura Belpré back to where she started, which was the schools and the libraries and with the children, and to revive the tradition of storytelling and reaching out to the communities and so on. So my goal was to bring back Pura Belpré to the children.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.